Hello Riven mains and Yasuo mains alike. I'm the Nightwing coming at you guys from Way of Life Esports. Today we just had Clutch Gaming taking on TSM in the first round of the quarterfinals for the LCS 2019 Summer Split. And to no avail, but some of you may have predicted it as well as I, Clutch Gaming takes down TSM 3-2-1. Now, there is quite a bit to break down about this series, as the scoreline may not have actually implied what actually went on, but it was rather back and forth at certain moments. It was more or less so what you expected out of the series, pending the fact that we know TSM chose to run Treats and Tactical as their subs for this series, and well, their future playoffs if they had made it that far, which came to a abrupt end today. We know that Spica or whatever they call him, was going to be their starting jungler for playoffs. TSM had released a video, the TSM Legend series, which I've watched for ever since season 5 is when they actually started doing it. I'm pretty sure season 4 they were doing like little bits of types of episodes like that, but as you guys know, in TSM Legends, Parth gave the reasons why they were playing Spica in the actual LCS playoffs coming up. They basically, what he meant was that they just didn't have any synergy anymore with Acadian or Greg within the main team, and trying to make it work after so many weeks and after so many games and so many losses, it just wasn't worth it at that point. But with that being said, you also kind of got the feeling that it wasn't going to work anyway, because even before this series, TSM Academy also lost with Greg and Acadian. Now, I don't put the blame on Greg at all, because he was stepping up because Brandini was being toxic and they had to find a replacement top laner. And when you watch the TSM Academy series versus Golden Gardens Academy, it really did look like Acadian was just all out of sorts. Now, I know it's not all his fault in general. I feel like he was very, very... what's that word kids use nowadays? Cucked? Yeah, he was very cucked by TSM, and I really did not like at all how they treated him. But looking at it towards this series, you knew back in the day, which was last year, in spring 2018, that Clutch upset TSM with the same scoreline. They had a much different roster back then, with a rookie jungler, and technically being Mike Young, Sven and Mithy, and they had Haunter. Now, the reason why they lost that, playoff best of 5 was because that was more or less so on them by not banning the Hakuho from Thresh and not banning certain picks that Clutch were actually really good on. This time around, we know that Cody Sun, Demonte, and Huni all wanted revenge against TSM. Cody Sun lost to TSM in the 2017 Summer Split Finals when he was back on Immortals. We know that Demonte and Huni both got beaten by TSM pretty much all this year, and then lost both best of 5s to them last year, both being when they were actually on Echo Fox. This time around, now judging by the things off their draft, they were drafting very uncomfortable things, and what I mean by that is that they were drafting things in a way that they never actually even played all split long. Don't get me wrong, I love when teams try new things, and I like when people try new things during the split to try and figure out what type of team you're actually going to become. But in playoffs right now, with as little as practice they probably had with Spica, the way they were trying to play around him was a way they actually had never really been successful with, even during this split. What I mean by that is that they would pick like Kled first round, and they would pick all these early aggressive picks, like the Zayas and stuff like that. And the Zaya did very well for them in game 3 when Sven got a pentakill on it. I feel like that was his literal best game of the split, if you just want to count that in general. Now, the way they were drafting literally made them want to be proactive. But then in game 2, they draft Vayne, and you're thinking to yourself like, what? Why? And then when Clutch was playing, Clutch clearly knew what their win conditions were. I felt like Lyra played really well. Cody Sun played really well. I know I took quite a bit of flack for putting Cody Sun as far as I did actually in my second team, but this series proves Cody Sun is really good, and I think a lot of people just really judge him based off of those Tristana rocket jumps that he was known for when he did that on the 100 Thieves and TSM matchup, third place matchup last year, and he did that in the 2017 World Championship. So, but you can't take highlight misplays and apply that to him as an actual player. He is a good defensive AD carry when given resources, can take over a team fight, and he always laned in position properly. His thing was more or less so if he gets beaten in lane, he is more or less known as Cody Dunn. Now, Clutch were not without their mistakes. This series literally could have went to 5 games. The way Clutch were playing on kind of this knife edge, it really could be easily tested when they go up against a better opponent. The better opponents are going to be TL or Cloud9, and we'll have to wait on the result of that matchup, pending tomorrow's result when Clutch face Optic. But Clutch's gameplay today was pretty good. Vulcan played really well. He had a lot of good engages and disengages when they were trying to dive him in the bot lane. And I want people to know that if you're a TSM fan, I would personally just not blame any of these players. Despite their rather not so good performances, Bjergsen and Broken Blade included, Bjergsen had a pretty decent performance. Broken Blade was trying. I'm not going to fault him too much. He tried really hard, and so did Smoothie. They all tried really hard, and I'll give Speaka credit. He tried really hard, and he messes up. Okay, you guys, you have to really be honest with yourself here. Did you honestly think that a rookie jungler who played in Academy was yanked from his team that he had built up synergy with all split long, put into the main team because the other 2 junglers this organization decided to run wasn't going to work out? And you can't fault him. Yes, he was going to whiff Sejuani ultimates because he's overall been very comfortable with that champion. If you look at his Academy play, he was playing Sejuani most of the split anyway. The issue with why I'm saying is to not blame him is because it's really not his fault. Like, imagine you being in that scenario. You're 18 years old and you're playing with an organization like with the caliber of like TSM, Cloud9, G2, TL, SKT, IG, teams that have really big fan bases and have really passionate fans about how their team is successful and if they're continuing their legacy. With all that being said, you have to understand that in his specific position, this is the reason why I had predicted Clutch to beat them. Not only were Clutch performing better than TSM for like at least 3 weeks in advance prior to this, you had to have looked at how TSM performed on their back end of their last 3 weeks of performance. The reason why I basically judged Clutch winning in the podcast that I did was that I looked at the past, let's say, 4 weeks before this match actually happened. I watched every single Clutch game again. I watched every single TSM game again. Now, both teams did not look good. I will say that. No team was out their fault. TSM literally should have lost way more games and probably not been in playoffs than how Clutch were playing. Now, that was given off of strength of schedule, which can obviously be a very different turning point for a lot of teams, but TSM never turned it on. It looked like that their synergy just all died out. Rather, as like when I watched Clutch, their synergy was all coming together at the right time as like they were peaking in the right places. And all of my reasons were laid out as the reason why I chose Clutch. I personally said Clutch would win 3-2, as I didn't feel like TSM would go out without a fight, like they did last time against Clutch in the quarterfinals of last year's spring split. Looking at the other side for Clutch, they drafted to all their strengths. Like, DeMonte was going to play his Quenya. He was the first player in the North American LCS to even bring out the Quenya. Huni playing his Rumble. I don't know why you constantly gave Huni Rumble knowing that he was literally taking over team fights with it. And, I understand you don't want to give a player that much leeway in the draft to the point where you're banning out things that he plays, because then it leaves, the possibility opened to get other more powerful OP picks on red side or blue side, depending on which side you're on. But if this is an actual problem that's literally losing you games, you gotta take it off. Yeah, I understand you're giving him a lot of leeway, but the fact of the matter is, yes, Huni does have a big champion pool, but in this specific instance, taking it away would have given them a little bit more leeway. Could they have brought this to a game 5? Yes, TSM could have. The reason why they could have did it is because in game 4, they had a lot of scaling in their composition. They were winning team fights when Clutch would clearly overextend to them. It was just more or less on the lines of Spica not having a lot of time to gel with the roster. TSM's roster is literally, not in shambles. I don't want to say that, but they're just not playing as a cohesive unit. They literally got stomped in one of the games. They had a rather close series in the other parts of the games. Sven's pentakill, I feel like people are going to highlight that. And yeah, it was just a really, really great play. But realistically so, if Clutch don't take that 5v4 team fight, and let's say Clutch just, when they kill Spica in the jungle, let's say they all back off, let's say they start resetting the map again, getting Baron Vision, and then let's say that after that they played a lot differently, then we could be looking at Clutch taking down TSM 3-0, but that didn't happen. And you have to kind of factor in, what was their mindset after game 3? Was it like, okay, did we just win that because they threw, or did we win that because we actually won that by having good vision control, good macro, all the things pander and matter to a certain point when you're actually laying out things the way they are. And looking at both series going from today and tomorrow, I hope that the next series goes to 5 games. I feel like that series will. This one almost went to 5 games. I feel like TSM could have won the game 4 they were actually in. I feel like bad positioning in team fights from a lot of the players really hurt them. I feel like Clutch's style can be upset. I do want to make sure I mention that, because we saw Clutch and teams like them upset big dogs like TSM and Cloud9, like, their type of team do that in quarterfinals, but then in the next round get completely stuffed when they're playing against a better team during that specific split. I want to remind you guys of when Dignitas beat Cloud9 in the 2017 spring split, and then right after that, Dignitas got absolutely mollywopped by that version of TSM, and then after that, they completely just tanked. Like, they lost the 3rd place match, then they lost the regional qualifier match. I want people to give them credit where credit is due, but I don't want people to overcredit them, because teams like them could easily just get knocked out next round, and then you'd be like, oh, well, this is the reason why they sucked all split. You don't want to be in that type of category. But overall, congrats to Clutch. I'm glad Huni and Demonte get their revenge. I'm glad I was able to predict that Clutch would win, actually. But, if you had actually watched the split, and you would actually watch the last few weeks of the game, I'm not saying the rest of the weeks don't count. If you had actually watched the last 4 weeks of the split, TSM winning this wasn't as one-sided as people wanted to make that out. Now, the reason why I know a lot of people predicted that, because TSM had been known to have bad regular splits and then turn it on to the playoffs. Now, I do want to preferentially point this out, and I did do it in that podcast too. TSM were able to do that back then because they had a super team. They literally had a super team that was built during the offseason. Before that split happened, they had a super team. We know super teams sometimes don't gel well at the first part of the split, it's happened with a lot of super teams. I feel like it was more easier back then to do that, not only because the league was weaker, but because the players were literally all like top 3 in their role. Like, if they didn't bounce back, I would have been thoroughly surprised if they didn't. But so I do want people to know that as well. The reason why they bounced back more often back then was because they more or less so had the best players in the league. That it was just more or less so. Why are they underperforming rather than the league being the teams in the league being a lot better than them? It was more or less so it was their games to lose rather than everybody else's to win. And you look at the Cloud9s of back then, and you look at how Immortals were also there, and it was more easier for them to do it because a lot of the orgs and whoever was in the actual split back then never really gave a concrete, accurate answer to beat teams like TSM in the playoffs, because the caliber of players they had versus the caliber of players that TSM had actually never matched. TSM players were always one step ahead of everybody else. But that's pretty much it for Clutch beating TSM. Obviously, speak of playing in the playoffs for the first time, that was just not gonna work out. I'm sorry for people who actually believe that. You gotta look at things for what they are. Cody Sun got player of the series. He played absolutely incredible. Hopefully, we'll obviously see him go up against Cloud9 or TL, and that'll be a very, very spicy matchup, pending on whoever TL chooses as of tomorrow's result. And for TSM, this might be the straw that breaks this roster's back. The team has been in limbo since they started to struggle earlier on in the season, and this early playoff exit has confirmed that they no longer are a top 3 team in North America. The organization needs to figure out what direction it's going to take with its lineup and coaching staff, because nothing has worked so far. Meanwhile, Clutch will head off to Detroit to battle against either Cloud9 or TL in the playoff semifinals. They'll find out their opponent when the series between CLG and Optic ends tomorrow. Yeah. They're now in the regional qualifier, so I don't want TSM fans going like, oh my god, is TSM not going to make Worlds? Most likely not either, but, we'll just say that okay. They're going to go in the regional qualifier. They're having the same type of split that Cloud9 had in summer 2017. It's just like, did really, really well in spring, and then to start tanking. Now, Cloud9 were able to bounce back that year and then make top 8 at Worlds. Do I think that TSM has that capability? Not really. But, they could bounce back in the gauntlet. I'll give them that much credit. They have FlyQuest in there, and FlyQuest are a pretty free win nonetheless. So, yeah, we'll see how TSM can prepare for the gauntlet. I don't really see it working out too much, but hey, I could be wrong. See you guys later. Like, comment, subscribe. Most of all, enjoy. Nightwing signing out, and Way of Life Esports out. See you guys later. Bye. Have a good day, and I'll see Cloud9's opponent tomorrow, actually, after the series between CLG and Optic concludes.